Can we talk about historical materialism? What did Marx mean by it? And why does it still matter? Historical materialism is this idea that history is driven by material meaning, which means physical, economic, or structural conditions, and it's opposed to these to ideological or political conditions, especially the way that societies produce and reproduce life through labor, technology, and social relations. So, in short, the economy shapes society, not the other way around. And so we need to have this conversation because historical materialism is central to any serious Marxist critique, and we need to embrace this as a tool to counter media saturation and geopolitical spin. This ideological warfare shapes not just what we know, but how we're told to know it. Because this is what it means to decolonize the mind, to train ourselves to see through manufactured stories and trace them back to the structures that produce them. Now, across the spectrum, whether it's economics, religion, power, greed, etc., historical materialism asks, who gets to speak about whom? So every time the United States accuses a rival like China, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, etc., of moral, political, or human rights abuses, it does so far outside its own selectively forgotten history, as if its own history of genocide, slavery, theft, fraud, and dispossession just doesn't apply. And so, don't get me wrong, this isn't to say that abuse of power or systemic violence doesn't exist everywhere. It exists everywhere across all households around the world. But historical materialism locates those realities in their historical and geopolitical contexts. The West tends to isolate tragedies as moral spectacles and justifies intervention or destabilization for its own end. And this is evident when real genocide and ecocide is happening in full view, protected by powerful countries with impunity. Now, these spectacles are repeated over and over again and consolidated through corporate media, think tanks, wire services, and even so-called independent outlets, until the framing itself feels like common sense. The issue is massaged, packaged, and distributed until it becomes this unquestioned matter of fact. But historical materialism should teach us to reject this kind of common sense when it is manufactured by power. Now, context disqualifies the moralistic finger-pointing unless you believe the US exists outside of history and is somehow blessed with some exceptional moral authority or democratic privilege that the rest of the world doesn't possess. And so when we consume information without asking who benefits, we risk becoming mouthpieces for empire, even when we think we're defending justice. Information today can easily pull us into conspiracy by fact dumping. Screens flood us with headlines, exposés, infographics. All of these facts are urgent, overwhelming, stripped of context. And so when everything is scandal, well then, what is history? So we need to ask, how do we find clarity beyond disinformation? How do we read through the noise without slipping into cynicism or conspiratorial confusion? And if we don't yet know the full story, then we should begin by asking, who owns this story? What voice is missing? What material interest is at stake? What historical process led to this moment? And what kind of world does this narrative seek to reproduce? Asking these questions isn't just analysis, it's refusal. Refusal to be colonized by consensus, refusal to mistake saturation for truth, refusal to let empire write the ending. So thank you. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and join me there, Onibaba at Substack. Thank you.